Hey guys, it's Karalynn, and welcome back to the podcast. And today we're going to do Think and Grow Rich Part 8, which the topic is persistence, which I think is quite fitting for the end of January, right? We've all have New Year's resolutions, things we stand out for the year. The end of January, they're kind of waning. How are we feeling? How are we doing on them? Are we being persistent? I mean, this whole chapter is great. If if you have a chance to get the book and read the actual chapter, I'll give you some of the highlights and it's kind of my perspective from my experience, what I've learned on this particular topic. But Napoleon Hill describes persistence as the sustained effort necessary to induce faith, meaning the harder you work, the more you see the fruits of your labor, the more likely you are to work hard, right? So being persistent is the key to success. And he lays this out. Persistence Persistence is based on willpower until it becomes a habit, right? Um, I've always been pretty persistent, so it's become a habit. And a lot of times, especially as a leader or of a business and as an entrepreneur, persistence can be misunderstood or seen as being cold-hearted or ruthless. I know I've seen that in my experience as a leader because I'm very direct, because I have a goal to reach, I have something to do. And it's not that I'm trying to be short. It's just, I know where I'm going. I need your help to get there. This is what I need done. Right. And so knowing that can make you seem cold hearted or uncaring, but you're actually just very driven at reaching a goal. And sometimes taking the time to explain that to your team, to people you work with is, hey, this is not me being short. This is just, I'm very direct because we have something to do. And this is how we're going to do it. And this is how I work. And that could be a very intense personality for people who are not used to that. So taking some time to explain how you communicate that it's based on the fact that you have an overall goal for everyone that would improve everyone's lives. But the way that you communicate that is through direct communication. Being persistent can become a habit. If it's not a habit already, having someone to help you hold accountable can be key. Now, Napoleon Hill talks about a mastermind group that we've talked about in other chapters, surrounding yourself with people that are successful in business or, successful with whatever goal you want to reach. I also think it is helpful to have a coach, right? We've had several coaches on the podcast that have very different perspectives on how to get there, but you can give them your idea without any judgment, and they will help give you another perspective, give you ideas on how to get there without judging you or telling you that you're wrong or you're overreaching or it's too big of a goal. So know that having a coach can help you being persistent to reach your goals, right? Like I said, I have a coach. There's been several on the podcast that I would highly recommend. You can go back and listen to some of those episodes, but it's just having someone to bounce ideas off and to hold you accountable for the steps you're taking to reach your goals, right? Making persistence a habit can start slow, step by step, like one day, every day, do one thing closer to the goal that you want to reach. You don't have to do everything all at once, just one step at a time. And, every time you do that, not only chemically will it change your brain, give you dopamine, and, you'll be excited, you'll be happy. Having a goal, not taking steps will do the opposite, right? It'll make you depressed. That there's this thing that you're supposed to be doing and you're not doing it for whatever reason can actually have a negative effect on your mental health. So small steps till it becomes a habit every day, right? Some people can come to persistence out of necessity, right? I know I did when I first started my law firm. It was started to help our other business, which was my husband and I other business, which was a material supply business. I'd gotten out of law school. I went to work for my real estate professor for about a year. And at the same time, we had started this material supply company. And very quickly, the collections for that company, reviewing, setting up the internal processes of credit apps and job sheets and all of that became a full-time job where I couldn't do anything else. So I opened my doors in 2006 by myself, having to figure it out because I had to. So our family could survive. So our, other business could survive. And I think there's a lot of things to be learned from that. You as entrepreneurs or small business owners, there's a lot. You're in such a situation of necessity as well. You got people relying on you, your family, all of your employees, and it really puts you in a position when difficult times come, you'll figure it out. And that's the kind of persistence that you need to have when you're pursuing any goal, right? It's got to be important to you, and knowing that you have a way to figure it out is key. That's what persistence is, no matter what happens, right? And as Napoleon Hill says, there's no substitute for persistence. You have to go through this, um, taking steps every day in the right direction. And here's the thing is that he says definite plan, um, all throughout this chapter, and we'll get to some of that. And yes, I think you have a different plan of where you're going, but the steps on how you get there might not be clear until you take action, right? So taking one small step and then feeling from there what the next step is. It's just taking one step at a time. He also has this great saying that I thought was quite telling is in the book, people who make a habit out of persistence seem to enjoy insurance against failure. Anybody who is persistent knows that that's not true. There's no insurance against failure. It might look like that from the outside because you keep going and you don't give up, but there's plenty of failure along the way. And another phrase that he has, I'm trying to find it, that goes with it. Every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage, right? And notice that he says seed. It's not automatically given to you. When things go wrong or things are difficult, you got to jump in and figure out exactly what wrong, where it happened, and how to fix it. And that way, it's not really a failure. It's something you're learning from. And so every time that happens, you grow from it, right? So through persistence, it's easy to be persistent when things are going easy, right? You just take a next step, take a next step. But most of the time, when you're persistent, there are going to be difficult things along the way. And the true persistence is going through those difficult situations, figuring them out and becoming better on the other side, right? All growth comes through some sort of pain, right? And so if we ignore the things that go wrong or blame them on somebody else, we're denying ourselves the opportunity to dive in and figure out how to fix it and what we can do better, right? I've had tons of experience as being a leader. So as I said, my firm started in 2006. Next year in 2026, we'll be 20 years old. I can't believe that. But I made a lot of missteps and wrong steps along the way as far as knowing how to look at the books, knowing how to build clients, knowing how to be a leader, right? And that's the one I've really kind of been working on over the last couple of years is that it's easy when people need their jobs to be a bad leader and things will still get done. When there's jobs everywhere and not enough people will leave unless you have a great place to work and are a good leader and have clarity around the position. So, a lot of my growth as a leader has come through figuring out how to be clear about what's expected, the processes, and being clear about the vision and where we're going. And I'm still learning on it, but there was huge pain points along the way that made me focus on those things to make us more successful, right? So through persistence, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult. Anything worth pursuing is going to be difficult. The thing is that you figure it out, right? What does he also say? He says, do not accept defeat as anything more than temporary, right? Defeat is temporary. I think it's part of persistence. We'll get to this in a second, is knowing that you'll figure it out. And anything you're persistent in you're gonna have resistance and you're gonna have to figure it out. And your initial plan that you thought you're gonna go this way is gonna change. It just is. There's gonna be ebbs and flows. But the thing about being persistent is that you keep taking the step forward, even when it's difficult, even when it's hard, even when you have to push out of your comfort zone and be vulnerable. Especially us as leaders have a huge time of not being vulnerable about who we are. That's another huge step in becoming a good leader and taking your business to the next step. So, what is Napoleon Hill says? Persistent is a mindset that can be learned, right? And so he has some key ways to change your mindset, right? Definitive purpose. The main thing, why are you doing it? Why is it important to you? Why do you want this thing? You have to have a desire to do it. I mean, honestly, guys, if you hate what you do or you hate going to work every day, it's really hard to be persistent, right? And so what does it look like? What do you what feels good to you? What do you like to do? What do you enjoy, right? And even when you pick out something like that and you find what you like to do and where your desire and your passion is, there's still going to be difficult days and things to figure out. But remembering why you're there and how much you want it and um, how much you're passionate about it. The next thing is to develop a mindset of persistence is self-reliance. And this doesn't mean doing everything on your own, right? This means having the faith that no matter what happens, you'll figure it out. It might not be easy, it might be messy, but you'll figure it out. And it might be painful. There might be financial losses along the way, but knowing that whatever happens, you'll dig in and figure it out, right? So that's huge. That's a huge one. And persistence and just in life in general. Definiteness of plans. Another one, like, this is my big goal. I know where I'm going. I don't know exactly how I'm going to get there, but taking right steps. So, like the big goal I have for our firm is to have offices in all 50 states. And how I'm going to get there has changed over the many iterations into many iterations that I've had just over a couple of years. At first, I thought I was going to do a brick and mortar building in each state. And then it turned into smaller offices and hiring and not having employees, but having a contract attorney. So I'm figuring it out, and it's not what it originally looked like, but I know where I'm going. This is a plan, right? So I've opened offices, and we have office in Houston, Austin, San Antonio, Dallas. We also have offices in California, in Ontario, and New Orleans. We're now opening a new office in Kansas. So it looks different than I originally thought, but I'm making progress towards that goal. And I think and I'm being persistent about it to figure it out. Once every quarter, we open a new office and figuring it out as we go. So I know where I'm going. It doesn't mean that every step along the way. And so some of that is, like, again, having faith that whatever happens, you'll figure out, right? He also says you need to have accurate knowledge of where you're going based on your experience or things that you studied or things that you've seen. Work out that your plan is based on something, right? You need cooperation, a good team to help you, reach your goals, and willpower, not giving up when things are hard. And then 8, and eventually persistence becomes a habit. And so that's what we're working toward. He also has a great list in here, and we'll kind of go through these, of symptoms of lack of persistence. All right, so the first one, he's got a bunch of them in here, but the first one is failure to recognize and clearly define exactly what you want. So definitive purpose, right? Like if you don't know where you're going, it's hard to be persistent about it. Procrastination, with or without cause. So knowing where you need to go, but not actually taking action. That's, again, the opposite of persistence is procrastination. Lack of interest in acquiring specialized knowledge. Are you willing to dive in and learn what you need to know to take the next step, or hire the right people to help you? Get a coach, a bookkeeper, an accountant, whatever specialized knowledge you need to get to the next step, be willing to dive in and learn it, right? Indecision, the habit of passing the buck on all occasions instead of facing the issues squarely. So, yeah. And I think as business owners, we all have this a little bit, like there's all these issues to deal with. I can only have time and energy to deal with this one. So I'm kind of ignoring the other ones for right now. But I think as long as you're dealing on one and diving in and dealing with one issue at a time, he's talking about not doing it at all and ignoring it, which can be the death of a business. The habit of relying on alibis instead of creating definite plans for solutions of problems. So I think this is when a problem arises, not facing it or blaming it on somebody else. Obviously in your business, there are going to be people who are responsible for things, but at the end of the day, it's your issue. If there's an issue, there's your issue. Self-satisfaction. There is but little remedy for this affliction and no hope for those who suffer from it. So Self-satisfaction is not the way to get to your goal. Number 7, he has indifference, usually reflected in your readiness to compromise on all occasions rather than meet an opposition and fight. This is an interesting one. Not caring at all, right? And I think it comes down to passion. If you're passionate about something, you care about it and you're willing to fight for it. And that's not to say, fighting in a negative way. There should be, if you have a management team or a few people you deal with at the top of your company, there should be conflict, and not conflict that's not resolved, but there should be a difference of opinions and different views of ideas that you're willing to stand up for, say, this is what I think should happen and here's why. And don't be wrong, at the end of the day, we're all going to make a decision and not everybody's going to get their way, but willing to fight for what you think is right. The habit of blaming others for your mistakes and accepting unfavorable circumstances is being unavoidable. Yes, again, taking responsibility for your own actions, the actions of your company, and realizing that when bad things do happen, you can dig in and figure out how they won't happen again, right? This is a big one when I help my clients with their contracts, right? If you're having the same issue over and over again with homeowners or in any project, let's dive in and address it in the contract so it won't be an issue in the future. But you got to jump in and deal with it. You can't just ignore it and expect it not to happen again. 9, the weakness of desire due to neglect in the choice of motives that impel action. So picking something you're not really passionate about. I think when you're moving towards a goal, things are going to get hard. You really have to be passionate and enjoy what you're doing. Willingness, even eagerness to quit at the first sign of defeat. Yes, this is a hard one to overcome. It's hard to get through hard things. But here's the thing you got to think about. No matter what you do, whatever area of life you're going to be in, there's going to be hardness, right? Like, so my daughters are complaining about how hard school is, right? They're in college or, when they're in high school, it's so hard. And here's the thing is that, yes, it's hard in high school, but it's going to be hard in life when you get a job. There's not anything that you do that's worth doing that's going to be easy. The hard just changes. And how passionate or how much do you want to overcome that hard is key, right? Lack of organized plans placed in writing where they can be analyzed. I think this is this is processes, right? This is being organized about what you do and how you do it. I'm not saying you can process everything, but there should be general steps of here's how we do this, X, Y, Z, and being clear about the expectations. And if you lack that, it's going to be very hard to get to the next step. The habit of neglecting to move on ideas or grasp opportunity when it presents itself. So I think there's 2 types of personalities in this, right? There's one personality wants to jump on everything that sees it's new and shiny. And then there's another personality that's a great idea, but I'm going to sit here and overthink it, right? And so you really have to be a combination of both. I'm usually the one that sees it and says, let's go do this great idea. And everybody's like, well, wait, we have all these other great ideas we're already working on. Not to say that we can't get there, but let's put it on the list. Or, yes, it's a great idea, but let's take a few minutes to figure out the first few steps that we're going to take to get there and not just jump. And then the other side of it is, well, I don't know exactly how it's going to work, so I'm not going to do it. And so there's got to be in the middle of overanalyzing and jumping without action, a combination of both. And so hopefully you have people on your team that are go-getters and want to do it, and the other ones are like, I don't know if we should do this. And the combination of 2 really gets you to where you need to go, right? The next one, wishing instead of willing. It's nice to wish and think about it, but you actually have to take action to do it. The habit of compromising with poverty instead of aiming at riches. A general absence of ambition to be and do and to own. There's a lot of talk about in this book about mindset, which I think he was tremendously ahead of his time. And don't get me wrong, I think all of these things are based on the people that he studied. Ford, Edison, the people that were the founders of industry. And he saw that What they focused on, they created, right? And now we're learning as science is picking up, that's how the mind works. What you focus on and what you believe, you will create. And I think he saw that when he was studying these people for over 20 years and how they behaved, is that they didn't focus on what would go wrong or focus on being poor. They focused on being rich and the things that would go right. And I think if you focus on the things always going wrong, that you're going to be poor, that's what you're going to attract, as opposed to thinking about how it's going to look when you succeed and all the riches that you'll get, right? 15, searching for all of the shortcuts to riches, trying to get without giving a fair equivalent, usually reflected in the habit of gambling or endeavoring to dive sharp bargains. Yes, there's no shortcuts to success. You have to go through learning how to be persistent, overcoming the difficulties, to actually, there might be some short-term gains, but they won't last. Unfortunately, there's no shortcuts to being successful. And the last one he has a whole chapter on, is the fear of criticism and what people will think about what you're doing. He even has a story about himself when Mr. Carnegie asked him to take on this project that he knew would take 20 years. And he's like, well, nobody's ever done this. Why should I do it? How am I qualified? Everybody's going to think I'm crazy. My family, nobody will understand. And then he almost didn't start the project because of all of those thoughts that he had. And so criticism, fear of being criticized by what other people think, is huge. And you have to overcome that to be successful. And sometimes sometimes, like I said, you can not even share the plans with them, right? Just go to a coach, go to your mastermind. This is what I'm thinking about doing, and then put it in action. And at the end they'll say, oh, we always knew you'd be successful. We knew it would go great. You're not so sure if you would have told them beforehand. So you have to overcome the fear of what other people think, right? And know what you want, what your passion is more important than that. So he's got a whole chapter on this and why it's the fear of criticism can stop you in your tracks and kill your dreams, and it really shouldn't, right? He also has a story in here about the founder of Domino's Pizza, about how when it started, it was just one store, founded by somebody that grew up in poverty, didn't come from anything, and he grew the company to a couple thousand franchises, and he sold it, and he was going to go do, give back to the community. But turns out within 2 years, the people he sold it to nearly drove it into bankruptcy. So he came back in and he took it over. And the big push when he first took it over was 30-minute guaranteed delivery. I don't know if you remember that. I kind of do. I think I was a little young. And it tells a story about how there was continuous accidents because of his pizza delivery drivers being in a hurry to deliver the pizza on the 30-minute guarantee. This was back in the late 80s. And so he got some judgments against him, one for $3 million, one for $78 million because his drivers were causing accidents because they were in a hurry to deliver the pizza, right? So he got rid of the 30-minute guarantee and figured out another way to become successful. But I mean, those two losses could have taken him out, but he figured out a way around it and grew it substantially, as you know, Domino's Pizza is today. Right. And so his desire to not give up and to figure it out and to make it successful was huge and got him through. And so then he's got a paragraph in here, how to develop persistence. And this is, 4 ideas or key thoughts on how to develop persistence. Define a purpose backed by burning desire for its fulfillment, right? What are you doing and why is it important to you? A definite plan expressed in continuous action. Like I said, having a plan of knowing where you're going and taking action and realizing that every step might not go as you think it should, but you'll figure it out. A mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences, including negative suggestions of relatives, friends, and acquaintances. No matter what they say, you're going to do it, right? And being that driven and not letting those negative thoughts penetrate what you're doing and where you're going. a friendly alliance with one or more persons who will encourage you to follow through with both your plans and purpose. Again, a coach, somebody that you could fight in, somebody that will believe in you. And when you tell them this huge dream you have, they'll be like, okay, how can we figure it out? How can we do this? That's what you need. You need cheerleaders to help you figure it out. He's also, the last story in the chapter is about the founder of Starbucks, Howard Schultz. And I don't know if you've seen the story before. It's actually quite compelling. So Howard Schultz actually started out working as a manager of Starbucks, who at the time, Starbucks was a whole bean distributor. They had a few cafes open where they sold their beans, but it wasn't a big part of their business. Now, he went to Italy when he was purchasing some high quality coffee beans and realized how in Italy, like, coffee was a big part of the social scene. They had cafes where they'd start each morning, have coffee. They'd come in after work, have a coffee, sit down and relax in a cafe, and just really was a big part of their culture and who they were. And so he came back and told the founders of Starbucks that he wanted to try this. He wanted to do this. And they said they weren't really interested in the idea because all of their money was what they made money on was selling wholesale coffee beans. So he quit his position at Starbucks, went and started a cafe that was very successful, and soon, like the 3 or 4 cafes. And then eventually he bought out Starbucks and the Starbucks name and made it what it is, right? And it turns out in his story, like the first couple of years that Starbucks was getting off the ground, they had $1 million losses. And again, this is in the late 80s, which is a substantial amount, but he didn't give up. He knew he was going to make Starbucks a household name. And if he would have given up, we would never have Starbucks or anything like it. So I think there's some great stories through history about people that were persistent even through, and if you ask anyone who's successful, any business, they had to have been persistent. There was difficult times they almost failed and they made it through. And that's what you got to do. Don't give up. All right, guys, I hope this was inspiring. I hope that's what you needed to hear at the end of January to drive you through to take your goals to the next step, right? You don't have to know exactly what the next step is. Just be persistent in taking actions toward it. All right, guys, thanks and look forward to talking to you next time.